All right, so very quickly, sort of, stuff about astrology that I know nothing about. Saturn in Libra in its exaltation, the planet is favorably placed in the opposite sign of its fall. Libra and Aries are opposite signs. September 21st, 1980, and November 29th to November 29th, 1982. And I was born in that time period. Saturn in Libra in its exaltation, the planet is favorably placed, blah, blah, blah. Exact same bit, but July 21st, 2010 to October 5th, 2012. Well, I had an initiation into the light on March 5th, 2011. So that's between that time period there. I ended up in the hospital on May 15th, 2011. Also in that time period. So it was like this rebirth of Saturn back into Libra. So it kind of makes sense why that happened in that time period. And Saturn, I think I talked a little bit about this before, but I'll talk about it again, how I Googled 8.5 month cycle, and I mostly got stuff about the birth cycle, but it also came up with Saturn. And it says, and I don't know what this sentence means. It was on a website of this woman, astrostyle.com/Saturn/return. And this one sentence says, Saturn will then pass back over by direct motion the degree at which its SRX on November 9th, 2015. It's 4 degrees, 56 Sagittarius, fulfilling its 8.5 month cycle of conception, gestation, and birthing phase. So I haven't read any other reference to this most important sentence, fulfilling its 8.5 month cycle of conception, gestation, and birthing phase, related to Saturn. So Saturn isn't only related to this 29-year cycle of Saturn being in Libra when I was born, and also when I was reborn in 2011, but also this whole 8.5 month cycle thing that I experience from crisis, struggle, back into the energy peaking at 8.5 months, and then it's the calm before the storm is what seems to happen. Because I took a screenshot of my Muse brain on October 2nd. I think I put it in a previous video here, but I'll probably put it in here again. And my brain cells, my brain microvolts were very calm. And then, you know, later in the month when I was fully in the crisis, October 29th and stuff, they were just going zzz. So it's like the calm before the storm, more relating this to the weather. And so this website also said the period between the retrograde station and the full cycle back to its passing over that degree is about 8.5 months, a gestation cycle deeply embedded in the psyche as a insemination, gestation, and birth cycle. So I won't read all of this, but another part says, give in, give it up, and give all to the higher power within you, and you will feel the seed within as it matures over the 8.5 month cycle. So this really resonated with me because it seems there is this 8.5 month cycle related to the Saturn as well as human birth. But this article that I found here, it is quite poignant. I won't read it off because I don't want to be like reading other people's words. I did that a little bit before and I want to be careful. And I don't like to read too many of other people's words because I have so many of the words of the universe coming at me that it's hard enough as it is to make sense of all of it. And I'm at a place now I feel like a lot can come at me from the universe and I can make sense of it. and I can kind of keep up with it for the most part, even though I'm behind right now. If I read other people's words, that only makes it way more to deal with. And that was something I had an insight about. And I want to talk about a bunch of the insights I've been having lately. I'm reconnected with insight for the time being until my brain implodes at some point. And I used to talk about insights. So I'm going to go back and just sort of talk about one soundbite at a time, not really tying them all together. That's what I have a hard time doing. They come to me in sound bites. But one thing I had an insight about was I watched a documentary called Hearing Voices, not Healing Voices, but Hearing Voices. It was produced by Thomas Metzinger's wife, Metzinger. And it's a really great documentary. And they were talking about how the voices probably come from the people themselves, because something about, they did a study that a person's jaw is moving when the voices are happening. But I realized that it's more related to, in my view, how we have these thoughts in our head, and usually we're speaking from that repertoire of thoughts. But there's another repertoire of speaking the voice of the universe. But when we haven't, and the universe speaks to me all the time, and I write down these insights. But I could also say them out loud right at that time, and my jaw would indeed be moving. But I choose to write them down. My jaw might flinch and move when I hear this voice of the universe telling me some kind of insight, like the insight I'm writing or I'm talking about right now, came to me. But I feel like a person's brain who's hearing voices is connected to that other source of a voice, of saying something, but it's been hijacked by the ego, which turns it all into negative bullshit, which is what it does even with what we call normal conscious experience. So then when it hijacks this voice of the universe process, trying to give us insight to write down or share with other people, it just turns into more crap about you suck. And since that connection and that level of connecting with insight is of like a higher energy and it's more clear, it just makes the ego stuff more energy, more clear, more awful. It's not like this vibration of awfulness that we're kind of used to. It's even more intense, and like it takes over and it's hard to function. The same thing happens with insight that is not hijacked by the ego, and there's like this information coming that seems kind of insightful from somewhere out of nowhere. It's new. I didn't think of it myself. It can be information overload too, and there can be too much of it. If I really connected and wanted me to write a lot of stuff down, I could fill up a notebook in a matter of hours with different things that are completely new. They're not from this bank of yada yada yada, which when I'm doing well, my brain doesn't have a bank of yada yada yada. I don't have inner chatter. And how do you prove that? I don't know. Doesn't matter. I don't care. But how do you prove that? I don't know. And it's not a matter of proof. I don't hear anything. And one of the things, I was watching this documentary called The Abundance Factor, and it was a pretty good documentary, a lot of the same stuff, but they gave the example of, they're talking about the brain and how a lot of times when we're driving, we'll go for like half an hour or 10 minutes or whatever and think, how did I get here? I don't remember driving from A to B, but obviously I did. I never have that sensation. I never think, oh wait, where was I? Now I'm back in the car and I'm kilometers further along. Like, I see every instance of driving and I never feel like, oh, my brain was somewhere else. When I'm awake, I'm here. But then there's these insights. The other thing that was fascinating about this documentary, and I don't even want to look this up, but it talked about this disorder, and they had a specific name for it, and I don't want to look up the name, but you can if you want, but I wouldn't really recommend it. And they showed clips of people enacting this disorder where people literally kill themselves in their sleep, like sleepwalk and then kill themselves. And it showed a clip of somebody like walking out a balcony and then sliding over the edge and then dropping down, and like it was on a security camera or something, and dying. And I'm like, whoa, that hits too close to home, because, you know, I don't have that, but I have the experience of waking up and feeling like I might harm myself, and I'm fully awake and aware of it, but there's this element compelling me to do it. And it feels like it's the same element that compels someone to do it, but they're just sleeping through it, unfortunately. And the thing is, the documentary producer, I can't remember his name, he experienced that, and he like walked off a second floor balcony in his sleep and just woke up in a hospital with the things beeping away. And I was like, whoa, that story is what got me to watch the documentary. I'm like, that is incredibly intense. But he didn't have a single injury. So then I was thinking, oh, I kind of get what that's about. Even though this crappy stuff is hard, like this whole sense that I have sometimes, or this sensation of jumping out of bed, my heart pounding, feeling like I'm going to harm myself, it wakes me up. So there's something in the crap that is trying to wake us up. And, you know, even the person who sleepwalks and ends their life, it's, I don't know, maybe they go into the light realm that I saw. I don't want to say stuff like that, but that could be comforting. And it was kind of comforting to see that dimension, but I almost don't want that kind of comfort. I want to be here. But, you know, that guy who experienced that jumped off a balcony in his sleep, or walked off a balcony and woke up in a hospital, but ended up walking out of the hospital the next day with no injuries. That woke him up. And then he went on to create this great documentary that has a lot of great messages in it. And it's a documentary about living your dreams and things like that. So I wasn't going to watch it. I got it in my email box for some reason. But then I watched it. I'm like, whoa, yeah, I was supposed to watch this just to learn about that weird disorder. Because what I saw as kind of an insight is, even though the realm of thought is awful and scary, there is a part of it that is trying to wake us up, even with the scary things that it does. So I would love to read this astrology article again. Really good. And then I looked at the astrologer, and she's very expensive. I think she's a really good astrologer, so I wouldn't be able to afford that. But and I think it was that page or a different page, Cafe Astrology. No, I think it was that same page. It says, every 27 to 29 years, Saturn returns, blah, blah. Your cosmic rite of passage. What do you want to be when you grow up, and when you're even ready to take on such a momentous role? Every 29 and a half years, approximately, you'll get the nudge you need to advance into a new stage of adulthood. In astrology, we call this the Saturn return. So that's exactly when I had my awakening experience that was labeled mental illness, and I'm still walking between those paradigms. It was the Saturn return, man. And it returns to the zodiac in which you were born. Saturn return, which can happen between 27 and 30, is a bit like a cosmic bar mitzvah. A rite of passage welcoming you into a more mature role here on Earth. Blah, blah, blah. And it goes on. So it's interesting to research this kind of stuff. It says you'll come to face to face with your own blocks and be forced to push through them. All the mistakes you made in the nearly 3 decades up to this seem to crystallize. Rather than repeating them on autopilot, you have a chance to turn lemons into lemonade And if you refuse to heed those lessons, Saturn will bring a drill sergeant-style smackdown. Indeed, the Saturn return starts off feeling a bit like boot camp for a lot of people. Yeah, so I think that was on astrostyle.com/Saturn-return. And the one before, talking about the Saturn retrograde, I think that was on Erin Sullivan, ErinSullivan.com, in a 2015 newsletter related to Aries, just to give the references. And then I wrote down all those things that I just shared. And I got that off of a wiki article or something. And so a bit on the quincunx, just a little blurb says that, but often with a shift of perspective involving the unexpected or perhaps surprising or previously unknown, or an opportunity for creativity, resourcefulness, and humor. So that is May 27th with Saturn, and then June 18th again. So I think that period will be good, but then it will totally tank, unfortunately. People might think by saying that that's going to create that, but last time I was saying it's not going to tank, and it tanked anyway. So getting with the whole material reality paradigm that it's going to all tank. And then I talked a little bit about the true node of the moon, but I didn't quite get and then in terms of the true node, there's something about what do they mean. In a karmic sense, the moon's nodes represent lessons to be learned in this earthly incarnation. These lessons almost always have to do with the way we connect with others. That's why the true nodes are associated with patterns of relating, and the wisdom to be found within them is often the key to recognizing and healing patterns of relating which stand in the way of our happiness. I'm interested in so many things, and there's not enough time to go super deep into it, but by knowing a little bit of all these things, or having a bit of understanding, it helps me understand more. So rather than specializing, by generalizing, then when something else comes up, I kind of see how it relates. Actually, longer ones were easier for me. And yeah, that's pretty much all the astrology stuff, and I probably won't talk about it too much again, except on those particular days. Maybe I'll mention it a bit tomorrow if anything happens with this Chiron that happens at 4:09 a.m. Could be interesting. So that's it for astrology, and I'll go on to something else.